Hello, this is Jim from Rough It in Retirement, an engineer's perspective, where we are free from work and free for adventure. So this past summer, I was able to camp about 4 or 5 times in different locations. Some of the places got pretty cold at night, below freezing. And one of the things I learned is how do you stay warm. And I had one option I used was a Mr. Heater, a Mr. Buddy heater. They come in different. I learned a few tricks during the summer as I used it on my various camping trips. So if you use a 1-pound cylinder, it'll last about 2 to 3 hours if you have it on low. I actually found that having it on pilot inside a tepui, a rooftop tent, is probably good enough. Another option is using a 15-pound propane cylinder. And in order to do that, you'll need a long extension hose. And most of these big box retailers actually won't sell the right hose that you need. I learned the hard way. I bought the Mr. Heater from a big box store, and then I just went ahead and picked like a 8-foot extension hose. And I did buy one of these filters, put it on there, and by the second camping trip, this fuel filter was already plugged. So apparently the hoses can leach out a polymer, and that polymer then will plug the fuel filter. And if you don't use the fuel filter, there's a good chance that it will plug the little nozzle in your Mr. Heater. So I found that if you go online, and the big box stores do sell them online, find a Mr. Heater hose that is specifically states that you don't need a fuel filter, it doesn't leach out the polymers, and you'll be fine. And just for precaution, I still use the fuel filter. I also use this setup with the 15-pound can and this hose to my Coleman stove that I cook on. So to use this is very easy. All you do is turn it on to pilot, and then takes about 2 or 3 clicks, and then hold it for a few seconds, and there you go, you have it running. Then you can turn it to low, and the whole thing turns on. And the good thing about Mr. Heater, it has a few safety features. It does have a low O2 sensor, and it will automatically cut off. The Mr. Heater Buddy system has a low oxygen sensor. I like to have a backup, and I have a carbon monoxide, a CO detector, and I think it will buzz once it reads 5 parts per million. And as far as I can tell, it hasn't gone off, but like I said, I usually run this in the pilot only mode, but when I do run the low heater, it has never gone off. But I always want something as a backup, especially if you're dealing with something that can combust in an enclosed area. So overall, the Mr. Heater has been pretty good. One thing I haven't tested is it's supposed to have automatic shut off if you tip it over. The other thing that I have to be cautious about is when it's just me, I'm not too concerned. I can be far away from the heater, but when I have more than one person in here, I got to be careful that the sleeping bag doesn't get too close to it and to the flame and potentially catch fire. So these are the things I'm trying to learn and trying to figure out. If you actually see it, I actually have it on a little wood table, and I'll raise it up so that way I know something's not going to roll into it. So I have been concerned about having the Mr. Heater on the bottom of my tent in case I roll over with the sleeping bag. I show that I do have it elevated a few inches, but I'm still a little concerned that even though it has a little grate that something can get in here and catch fire. So unfortunately, I don't have a video of it hanging from the aluminum support of the rooftop tent, but that's the next iteration I've done. So it's going to make a little noise, but what I do is I take a chain, and with carabiners, I actually then wrap the top part around the aluminum pole of the tent. And that has worked pretty good. Now, I will caution you that if you're going to do this, you got to be very mindful of the top temperature of the tent. Like I said, this thing can get very hot. I have it on pilot right now, and just to show you the temperature in the garage is about 52 degrees right now. And if I actually take this little piece of cardboard to kind of hit the heat as it rises, if I get it really close, I have 74 is the hottest temperature right now that I have. So from 52 to 74, you're seeing about a 20 degree increase just by the pilot. So if I turn on the heat to low, and like I said, I never run it on low unless it's first thing in the morning and I want to heat up the tent. And usually what I do is then I take the heater, Mr. Heater, down and then put it on the little table I have, and then it heats up the whole tent. Now that I have the Mr. Heater on low, I'll take the temperature again. And remember, it's 52 degrees in the garage. And so if I simulate this as the top of the tent, I am now seeing temperatures of 136 degrees, seems to be the hottest one I've seen. Oh, here's the one, 157 degrees. So that's why I do not recommend that you actually put this Mr. Heater on low if you're going to suspend it from one of the aluminum supports. To put it on low, take it down and put it in a safe area on the bottom of the tent. Just for fun, I put the heater on high and see what the temperature would be if it's only a few inches away. And obviously you would never want to do this inside the tent. I'm reading temperatures of over 230, 235 degrees. 240 degrees. So obviously this reinforces the reason not to run the Mr. Heater on low or high if you're going to hang it from one of the aluminum supports of your tent. So if you're going to want to have it on low or high, I'll go ahead and take the Mr. Heater down, put it on a stable surface in the corner of your tent, and you'll be fine. Just make sure there's nothing above the Mr. Heater. As you can see, it can get hot real quick. Using the Mr. Heater, depending on the situation I'm at, if I'm arriving late, I'll just go ahead and use a 1 pound propane cylinder. But if I have time to set up and it's going to be really cold, I'll go ahead and use the 15 pound gas cylinder. I also find that at altitudes, it does get a little sketchy. I think the brochure says it probably doesn't work as well at 8,000 or 9,000 feet. And of course, some of my camping is high as 11,000 feet. And at 11,000 feet, I find that the setting on low and high cuts out pretty quick, and that's the oxygen sensor, and that's okay. Now I do use it in the tent and keep it on just pilot. If I put it on low, the temperature inside a rooftop tent, I have a Tepui tent, gets pretty warm. And in fact, one time I did that and I woke up an hour later in a pool of sweat. So obviously this thing's actually a little too good for a rooftop tent at the low settings. So I actually set it on the pilot and let it go from there. And if you have it on pilot, usually the 1 pound cylinder will work for several days or several nights. And then it's never run out using the 15 pound cylinder. So last night, being in the mid to low 30s, with the pilot on, it stayed in the low 50s. my tent is able to hold maybe 10 degrees warmer than the outside. But with the pilot on the Mr. Heater, it goes to maybe about 20 degrees warmer than the outside cylinder. Now, I also have the ability to insulate my Tepui tent and also to add a weather guard on top. And if you use either one of those options, the amount of airflow through your tent decreases significantly, and even the pilot will cut out even if you're not at high altitude. So overall, I actually recommended one of these to my friends who does just ground camping, and he found it was a godsend. And he and his wife, when we went up to the Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons, he felt that Mr. Heater actually made the camping trip worthwhile. So, hopefully this is helpful. These are the lessons learned I had from the 4 or 5 camping trips. If you like it, please press like, and always subscribe to the channel, and please leave any comments that you have. Thanks.